A player, Curry born, captained the 1997 Knights to the premiership in the ARL competition that year. 20 tests for Australia, 20 games for his almighty Blues, New South Wales. And
consecutive.
Consecutive, yeah, you're right. And that man is, of course, the Chief, Paul Harragon, joins us on Sports Day. How are you, Chief?
Howdy, boys. How you going?
Well, most importantly, how's life with you?
Yeah, I'm cruising, mate. No, I'm doing well. The years go pretty quick these days, but no, I'm still loving the footy. I think I think last year's footy was probably one of the standout years for a while, and again this year I'm really enjoying it. So no, going well.
Hey, Chief, is it true that I remember I read this somewhere, and I think this is probably why you and Rat probably get on okay. Is it true that you were once a winger in your junior days?
Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah, I broke my collarbone when I was about 16. Dig this, boys. I was at train, and back in those days they had the truck tubes.
Yep.
Remember them? Used to
roll them. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So, mate, I was in the off season, and I was at Keene. I tackled it, went straight over the top, knocked myself out, and broke the collarbone. And the old girl goes, "You're not playing anyway." The coach ended up saying, "Mate, I'll put him on the wing." And for a couple of games, and then we'll be right. Well, that went for about 4 years. It was an outrage. I was about 20 before I got back into the second row. But I kind of wing and a bit of centre. I think I played the first couple of first grades in '88 in the centres.
Wow!
Against Gene Miles, I remember running on. It was pretty. But, mate, there's not much doing out there, Matty boy. I'm going to take it. It's a little bit boring after a while.
Well, mate, I mean, I went looking for the work, Chief. And this is why we're kindred spirits.
Yeah,
I remember in
hungry.
'98 we were teammates in my first ever Test match. It was a very special time for me getting to play alongside you. But, mate, in this day and age, and I love hearing you say,
likewise.
I love hearing you say that you're enjoying the game, because a lot of older players, they look at it now and they think, what's going on with the game?
Sanitised, yeah.
But I think the game had to evolve, and it's had to change. And there was a lot of stuff that went on back when you and I played, and the people before us that you probably couldn't have today. But are you getting out to many games nowadays?
Yeah, only my local boys, the Knights. But no, I do watch, and I watch keenly. And I do think you're right. Our game's evolved, and you can make too many changes, and you can go too far. But there's a few more contests in the game. I think the more contests, like when we lost the scrum, that was a genuine contest in the old days to some degree. We took that out. We've taken more out. But in AFL, they have a fair few contests, even in the union, as you know. There's a couple more, but. Yeah, just the way they've tweaked the kicking game. I notice now, even with the drop kicks, it's kind of not like a given now that you're going to get the ball from a dropout these days. But I just think the closeness of last year, the quality of last year. Although it's interesting, boys. I don't know what your thoughts are, but a couple of blowouts at the start of the year is always interesting. A few bigger scores this year.
Yeah. Now, Chief, talking about the new game, and of course, you don't want your mothers are looking at the game and seeing people get punched, and the no punching policy now. Thanks, Gal. But it's allowing wingers now to come in.
Easy on the wingers.
Yeah, they start sort of, front shirting people now, and we see it quite a bit in chirpy hookers. Now, I want to know back in the day. So let's look at the situation back in the day. If there was no punching, if there was punching available, and Jack Ellsgood comes flying in and grabs hold of Tony Butterfield by the front of the jersey and starts pushing him around. He probably wouldn't have got too far, would he, Chief?
No. You wouldn't have got too far. That's not acceptable. But basically, anyone. I mean, as a front rower, or a leader in the pack, it's basically anyone who tries to run roughshod over anyone in the team. Most to say this saying to our boys is that. When you pull the cat's tail, you get the whole cat, and the cat's pissed off because you just pulled its tail. So, if anyone's tugging on any one of my players, if it's the winger, centre, or fullback, it doesn't just get him; he gets all of us, and we're really pissed. So, to do that and make sure that they don't do it again, you've got to do what you've got to do, and without that little bit of fear or repercussion, you want to go and sledging. You're sledging me. I'll chase you all over the park. That's I was on the verge of the really right at the end where the referee come in and go, boys, you got 5 minutes, 5 minutes, and then that's it. So you could basically go and do, whatever you needed to do for that first bit. But the game had to change, and it's great. The concussion rulings, the shoulder charge, all those type of things. Shoulder charge was a big weapon when we were playing. I mean, that could really take you out of the game, and used well. I mean, it's a great deterrent. So, it's kind of good. All that stuff's gone. It really is on a safety level. But yeah, it's pretty interesting, back in those days.
Now, back in those days, I always think back when we were playing under 21s and those lower grades, Chief, and the Newcastle fans. But playing at Marathon Stadium was always a highlight. One for me because my family came from the coalfields. But secondly, Chief, under 21, if you can think back, 12 o'clock kickoff, the hill at Marathon Stadium was already full. And so we shouldn't be surprised when the conditions on the weekend, which were horrific conditions against the Warriors, 16,000 to 18,000 fans still turn up.
Oh, yeah. Mate, you know what? You do. You understand. But honestly, rugby league, when the game first started, right, in 1908 in Sydney, the original comp, we were in it. We Newcastle people, because when you've got to remember when the game started in Northern England, where they break away a little bit from the Union boys and they play the ball. A lot of those were English coal miners. A lot of them come over to to Australia. They go to Newcastle. Mate, we since the game was started, we've been in it. They love it here, and I think the boys went down for a train for a little bit, and they ended up pulling a pin because it just took them all weekend to get down there. And the Newcastle comp's been going since 1910. And we've had a couple of mortals out of that and some great players. So just to give you a little bit of an idea how much it's ingrained into this area, it's pretty awesome. It's an amazing feeling.
Yeah. 12 p.m. kickoff from under 21s, but the showers were still cold, and the dressing rooms were hosed out.
Flooded,
back in those days. It was tough going to Marathon.
Now that's a fact. We used to send Neville in there. He'd hose the ceiling in particular, because when the water's dripping down, all the seats, no one sits down on a dry seat, and the floors. So freezing cold day, you're not comfortable. Yeah, mate, that was our only weapon, being a bit physical.
I believe it, Chief. I believe it. I suffered it.
Remember standing on chairs, putting your socks on? Oh, it was horrific.
Horrible.
Yeah.
Mate, I wanted to talk to you, Chief, about 97. And one thing in particular, I've heard brief moments about in 97, the drive out of Newcastle to head down the highway to Sydney to play in the grand final. If you could just sort of paint a little bit of a picture, what was I heard there were people lining the highways down to Gosford, like it was just insane.
Yeah, no, it was. And look, in life, you get that dualistic, where you're the good, the bad, the hot, the cold. To put it in perspective, Newcastle, we just had a bicentenary 200th year celebration. BHP just said they're leaving town, so thousands were losing their jobs. And the Super League war was, flying. So we had two teams in the town. Brothers are arguing against each other. The trade unions are involved. Windows were getting smashed of offices of the Mariners a little bit. And it was just a really bad time. And then out of all that tumultuous situation, we end up in the grand final against Manly, who had beaten us 11 times in a row. They were the perennial favourites for the last few years. They won the grand final the year before. So just painting the picture a little bit, it was a really tough time for Newcastle. And then we're all of a sudden, at the start of the week of leading up to the grand final, we were all just sort of, going along for the ride. But somewhere along the middle of it, everything sort of changed. And we kind of all realised to a man that, wow, this is more than rugby league for us, and it wasn't a burden where, you get nervous and you feel an expectation. It wasn't. It was nothing like that. It was like really empowering and uplifting. And, I could sense a transition about Tuesday, Wednesday, but by, I think, the Saturday morning when we left, it was fever pitch. And so I get to the ground to get on the bus. I couldn't get in. I couldn't get a car park. They reckon there was about 15,000, 20,000, and there was like one player, it'd be like a kaleidoscope of colours of like just hundreds and hundreds of people around each player going in. So they had to get us into the ground to get us away. we get back in the bus, and then all the way out of that car park along Griffith Road until we get onto the link roads, onto the main highways. Just the whole traffic stopped, every traffic light stopped, people on their cars jumping around. So we had the odd bloke like Mark Glanville who was playing his last game. He was howling. A couple other blokes were really, really emotional. So talk about supercharged. It was incredible.
And talking about that grand final, and of course there was this own personal battle, on-field personal battle you always have with Spud. Now, you always wanted each other, but knowing you were going to go up against him in the grand final, Chief, was there an internal battle just in your own mind, realising that was going to be something different just individually between yourself and Spud?
Well, not really. By then, Spud's pretty, straight up and down as far as what you're going to get. You just get everything. There was boys who were 3 or 4 years, so I think we might have played, I don't know, maybe 6 times, 7 times. I knew in the morning when I was eating my breakfast, I was going to fight that day. I was going to fight him. We fought 7 times in a row. It was just like, I combed my hair. I'm gonna be duking Spud today. That's all right. But the thing about that grand final is that I had to show to everyone else that this is not a normal time. This time it's different. So I was really keen on making sure, really relaxed, having a good time. So when I walked out with twos to spin the coin, I smacked him on the backside. I got him in the headlock. He goes, "What's wrong with you?" I was really trying to lighten it up. He's going, "You're an idiot. You're an imbecile." And I made my mind up, when I walk back in that dressing room, I'm going to make it really light. Well, I didn't have to. Robbie Davis was doing doing a worm. They had a massive big jukeboxy speaker thing in there. They're all dancing and carrying on, having their time of their life. Because, as I said, these guys have beaten us 11 times in a row. We couldn't even remember the last time we won. So everything had to be different from the start to the finish. So as far as Spud, I was ready, mate. I was ready. Whatever happened, if we were going to duke, we didn't end up duking. We just had half a one. But no, it's a part of the game, and I actually, what the go is with rivalry, boys. The great thing about rivalry is it brings the best out in you. So he was great. He was great.
Mate, back in those days, you mentioned Mark Glanville, and I think of the likes of Billy Peden. Just Newcastle was just known of having these just hard-working guys that every football team needs. But the Newcastle teams back in those 90s and just had players that you just knew they weren't going to stop. Is that something that Newcastle directly recruited, or is that just something that's a byproduct of the area, that real blue-collar, hard-working, we've got to keep going sort of mentality?
That's a great question, because it's a little bit of both. That is that mentality. That's who we are, and we really, really honourable or honoured that identification. Newcastle, we work really hard, and we don't take too much for granted, and we don't take fools easy. We're really physical people. So if we're going to lose, it's all right. It wasn't okay if you want. We didn't want to lose if someone wanted it more than us. That didn't, and we never wanted to lose where someone was more physical or out physical to us. That was unacceptable. And that produced, that tough sort of person. But I've got to say, Matt, probably the biggest thing was Alan McMahon was our first coach, and Alan Bell was our assistant. What a brilliant man he was. And our credo was to be the player that every other player wants to play with. And that player was sort of earmarked early, is that's the guy who does the decoys for everyone else. That's the guy who's chasing for marker. That's the guy who's doing everything else no one else wants to do. When there's trouble, he's the first one there to help. And we sort of went through and made a list of all the things that we feel is that, that player. When you're standing in a line, you've had 3 or 4 sets of row on the set of 6.
Yep.
Well, you look, left, I see Billy Peden there, and I look on the other side, I see Tony Butterfield. I know that there's no way in the world they're going to let me down, and while I've still got air in my lungs, I ain't letting them. So that was instilled in us. But I reckon that simple saying, to be the player everyone else wanted to play with, really, it still stands today. The boys use it today. It's great.
Who was in those early years, Chief, when you were a young guy coming through, who was the real alpha male of the team? Like, who was the guy that everyone just, whether they were the captain or not, but they were just the one that basically was the big dog of the pound?
Well, when we first started, there wasn't a lot of money. So, say Tony Butterfield in those days was playing reserve grade for Penrith, but he was a good potential tough. when Mark Sargent was playing first grade with Canterbury and Mick Hagan, like that was big news. But we probably had about a handful, half a dozen Kiwis, internationals sort of come over, Tony Kemp, Stan Stewart and all that type of stuff. But for mine, Sarjo in 1990, he got the Aussie cap, and that just blew everyone out the water. That was so great. First one coming through, and he was a great local junior. So yeah, like Sarge was great. But look, I really admired Mick Hagan when he came. Hagues was a great captain, very articulate, nothing we've experienced before, and he really got the best out of me. So I thought he was wonderful as well.
Just looking at some of the names in that first team now, Ratnai, Glenn Friendo and Glenn Miller, Gavin Hanrahan, Robbie
Moth.
Chew, Tia Rapati, some big names. The Moth, Robbie McCormick. So what's the Moth? Is the Moth is because he's always headed towards the last lot that was on? Is that it?
No, I think he got busted hiding in a cupboard or something, and like a moth or something like that. But mate, I just had a beer with the Moth and Brad Godden and who else? A few of the boys I used to play with at Redhead Surf Club. What a great man he is, boys. You'll know this one, isn't it great? When you've played with someone, you haven't seen him in a while. That twinkle in the eye of all the things you've been through together, it's still there. Isn't it wonderful just having a chat again?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh mate, I've had that experience just a couple of weeks ago, just down at Shark Park at for the Paul Green medal round, and there's a saying I heard. It's like you can't make new old friends, and you'll never replicate those experiences. And rugby league is full of great men, great people, and we're very blessed to have played it. And catching up with those friends is something pretty special, isn't it?
Oh yeah, old friends are the best, mate. It's gold.
It gives you an opportunity to be immature again. Hey, Kay, before we let you go, Chief, can you name 3 front of jersey sponsors in the history of the Newcastle Knights? You should do this pretty easy.
Yeah, I reckon I'll go right. Yeah, of course, Henny Penny.
Yes, number one.
Mate, it was a thrill of my life when I was a young bloke. I got a an endorsement with Henny Penny. I'd done the ads. I still remember every word of it. I was eating foul. I was eating foul every day. It was unreal. Henny Penny, great.
Nice.
BP was probably the second one after that.
Yep.
Then we had Impulse Airlines.
Did too, yeah.
That was a good one too. From Impulse Airlines, I think we had Coal and Allied.
Yep.
There's one in between there I'm missing. Then after Coal and Allied, NIB has been a perennial sponsor of the club. Are
you still doing NIB
there's probably
ads,
one
Chief?
more there. What is it? Yeah, I've been with NIB, Matty, for over 30 years now.
Wow.
It's they're a good Newcastle company that started back in the BHP days, formed out of there, and it's done really great. So yeah, no, I'm chuffed to still be involved. They're great people and a great Australian company there.
Yeah, awesome.
Hey, Chief, we love going back into the archives and talking to some of the real characters of the game, and you're definitely one of those as well. And we're so honoured to be able to for you to take time out and join us on Sports Day, mate. So thank you very much.
Oh, thanks so much for having us, boys. Great to talk to you. Cheers.